Welcome to the Deep Chat.
Well, here's the hot take for this week, Brad. Will AI software solutions like dall-e eventually replace creative graphic design occupations?
Good one. So easy, no. But there's a lot of caveats in that. I would say no because we're doing a blanket replace, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I think there's a lot of room for them to break into that market and do away with everyday graphic design. So that's my quick hot take, which we'll unpack. But what's yours?
I'm going to go with yes. I actually think this is an inevitable thing, and it's. I guess the counterpoint could be, no, these are just better tools for the craftspeople. But I do think there's an elimination that's going to take place here.
All right. First, then, let's bound it with a time range. My time range, I'm thinking 10, 15 years.
Oh, that's easy. I was going to go 5 because the future's here. It's just not evenly distributed.
And it's a little too expensive just yet to make it all happen. But okay.
Yeah, but you know how that goes.
So let's talk within 5 years. Let's gut take what percent of the market will disappear in 5 years and move from humans actually doing it, graphic design, to dall-e or some AI-derived algorithm.
It's going to come down to how you measure it, but I would just
market?
Go ahead and say 50% just to put out a random number.
In the next 5 years.
Yeah.
I was going to say roughly around there too, 50, 60%.
And the specific part of the market that I think is gone, it's not the, vice senior graphic designer at Nike or Coca-Cola or these brands that carefully craft their image. It's the people, the small business owners that need quick website improvements or a stock image for their blog. And today you go to Shutterstock, you pay a few bucks for the same image everybody else already bought and put on their blog. Instead, you'll pay a few cents for a bona fide unique image. All that photography work, low-rent graphic design, that's gone.
Yep, that's exactly where I'm thinking it's going to be gone. And the reason I didn't say replace, so if we're talking about the low end, 100% agree. I think if I project out far enough, even just in the next 5 years, but if I go beyond that, I'm looking at the timeline of it saying it's going to be this sort of Trojan horse. Graphic designers will begin to use it and leverage it as a creativity tool, something that presents them different options. And they may end up riffing off of it, but as a Trojan horse, it's slowly going to infect the community where the business development person who hired a graphic designer is going to know about this tool and say, well, those are good. Why am I paying a graphic designer when I can just go and do it myself through a service or have the tool local at my company? More than likely it's a service, right?
Yeah.
So as a Trojan horse, there will be this transition period, and then all of a sudden people will realize, wow, I can cut costs. And anytime you can cut costs, like you said, there are going to be changes. So someone will cut costs. They'll wipe out the low-end work. The only work that will be left over will be the high-end work. So I made this analogy. Maybe it's not the greatest, but when we initially discussed doing this or having this conversation was maybe it's IKEA furniture, which is, mass manufactured versus wooden joinery that a professional artist does and handcrafted furniture.
Yeah.
Right? Some people are going to pay an exorbitant amount for handcrafted. People do it all the time. And I think that there's a future where dall-e doesn't replace those 5% that are willing to pay that, whatever the percent is, 2% that are willing to pay that extra cost to have something handcrafted because it means something, because it's a brand recognition to say, handcrafted. I could even see a future in which we have a watermark or a tiny little symbol that says genuinely handcrafted.
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting analogy, but I think it's flawed in a number of key ways. So, for one thing, it's not just the custom furniture. It isn't just that it's handcrafted and it has, the unique flourish, all that kind of stuff. It's also that it's custom. I have an IKEA piece of furniture in my closet, and then there's like an 8-inch gap because the standard size is, I have a bigger space than that. If I had spent the money on something custom, it would have perfectly filled the space. It's not just the craftsmanship I'd be going for. It's, a uniquely suited thing. And that's where the analogy breaks down. dall-e actually can be that. It's not give me a picture of a cow in a field and there's two choices. It's infinite choices until I find the one I like, or make me a new one that has a McDonald's sign in the background.
Sure. So when you go to a custom furniture builder, they're doing it exactly to your specifications, and you get to adjust it along the way. Like, no, I like red. No, I like blue. No, I need harder edges. I need rounded edges. Right? That's all stuff you can do with dall-e, whereas you
Very
can't
easily.
with,
Yeah.
right? Yeah, you can't with IKEA. You get what you get.
Yep. So in that regard, I mean, maybe the future of graphic design is more of an engineering role, and it's the operators of these systems that know how to best converse with them and ask them for changes.
Well, that's right. You know, we work on something together for NASA, and it's similar to that. We have this system that really you need an engineer to sit in front of to get the best out of the system, but it interprets the user's goals into something that an engineer and the algorithm can understand.
Yeah.
And so you need a human in the loop to do that. Is that kind of what you're saying? Is that perhaps to get the best out of this dall-e algorithm or whatever algorithm it is, you'll need a bit of a translator. Maybe not much, but something.
Yeah, well, it's like this. So I am genuinely thinking next year I want to have a new logo for my company. It's been basically 8 years. Let's have a change. So I could get access to one of these systems and I could say, cool logo or machine learning logo or whatever, but I'm not, it really relies not just on what that model's capable of, but what I put into it as well. Whereas if I go to a human graphic designer, hopefully they'll ask more questions about like what is the idea of the brand, where are you going, what do you want people to think about. I don't even know the right interview questions, but I think someone good at making logos is going to start from a non-graphical place and bring the essence to the table. And that process of figuring out like what is this, how should this engineering guy represent his business to the outside world, that translation then becomes some instructions to dall-e. So that's where the human in the loop really needs to be.
So to give you an example, on 99 Designs, if you go through them to get a logo, they ask you all those questions. You fill out an intake form, and then it goes out to the wider audience, and the wider audience of graphic designers makes as many, they each make, I think, 5 different designs, rough sketches, and then you start selecting the ones you like, and you down select in different rounds.
But you get pretty generic stuff.
You do get pretty generic stuff. I'm not arguing that that's better. I'm saying that that's precisely what they do, is they have kind of like a front end that acts as the salesperson to make sure that you get the right information to make the process work, right? Because they ask you questions like, well, how do you want your business to feel? What colors do you want it associated with? What are some verbs? Things like that.
Yeah, I guess that's where I'm going to draw a distinction. They are doing that, but not in a way that I even consider like a human process. It's just some,
it's forms.
Yeah, it's a form somebody made up. A real interaction, a genuine interaction with a graphic designer would be more of a conversation. Like you brought up, should it make you feel? Like, I'm actually annoyed when people want to make things emotional that aren't intrinsically emotional. I would hope someone I'd work would pick up on that and say, like, all right, let me use different language to get what I need out of this person. It's an evolution as you understand each other.
Right. So they've worked with the algorithm enough to know how to get the best results out of the algorithm.
Well, it goes both ways, how to get the right information out of the customer, but then, yes, also how to get the most out of the algorithm, because it is a black box to most of the users, but they'll have an overall experience with it. Like, I've been watching some of the videos on YouTube of people who've tried out the various generative models, and they'll make observations like, oh, this thing does really well when I ask for sci-fi concepts or Picasso, but it doesn't seem to know who Georgia O'Keeffe is or what the Wild West is. And that's really a reflection of a bias or an absence in the training data set.
Oh, interesting. Okay, right. It would be hard to teach the model to say, I suppose in the future you could have the model say, I don't know enough about that. Can you give me more?
Yeah, there's no intrinsic way to do that, but somebody could come up with a method.
Right, yeah, or you could just let it generate and see what happens. And the interesting part is the users would end up selecting things they like, right, and reinforcing it. Well, at least reinforcing it for that user. It doesn't necessarily mean it's going to reinforce for the broader audience, because everybody likes something different.
there is a lot of interesting opportunities to get feedback and use it right away to generate the new images, but also to socialize that feedback. But one thing that's missing is the initial training data set. It's never going to inference beyond that. The bigger the better, but also in some sense the more targeted the better. It may turn out that there's a couple of large companies that build these large models, and different companies are known for different things. Like if you want realistic sci-fi stuff, you got to rent Disney's model that they've open sourced or that they license. But if you want something that's specifically for I don't know, geospatial imaging, that there's some scientific company that trained a model that mostly uses satellite photos, so you would use their inferencing model. There could be a little cottage industry of who has the best training data.
Oh, that definitely makes sense, because not all data is open. So you would think the company with the broadest set of data would be able to serve the broadest set of customers, which is cool. So tying this back to our initial topic, in the future, you see pretty much wholesale art being replaced. Now, we said after 5 years, you said maybe 50, 60% of typical art will be done by machine, right?
I'm going to go ahead and raise that to 90%. Because when you think about it, the art that people actually see is on billboards and websites and banner ads, and all that stuff is low-hanging fruit.
It's funny because I was thinking the exact same thing. All that low-hanging fruit and websites. I mean, you see so much quote unquote art every day, but it's pretty straightforward. Now,
yeah.
If we take a look at just our list of things to talk about, there's images in there, right? We're seeing art all the time. Now, I could, as a journalist, say, well, damn it, I need an image. I need an image looking down on a beach.
Right.
Does it really matter if it's the beach that's in the article? Most of the time, it probably doesn't.
It probably isn't.
And it probably isn't.
Everything
right?
is stock photos now, really.
Right. So now that's just one example. Or like you said, billboards. Anything walking around on the street, someone needs a logo in there to advertise something in the front of their storefront, It's everywhere. So yeah, I'd go as high as 70 to 80% in 5 years, just because and it's not because people don't appreciate the skill it takes. It's just because it's efficient. That's it. If I can get something as good as or good enough.
Well, no, I will say most people don't appreciate.
Well, that's probably true. Have you ever seen the graphic design videos of people saying, oh, why can't you do this for, X amount of money? Like far, far less. This should only take you, a couple hours. And then the graphic designer telling them what they actually have to do, right? There's videos of that.
I bet that's great, yeah.
Art is not appreciated and graphic design is not appreciated. The simple fact that this logo or this design, whatever it is going to represent an entire company, but yet people aren't willing to pay for it. And I think that's where the issue comes in with graphic designers. People don't want to pay money, but yet it is the face of the company in all your, say, packaging or, your internet ads, etc. So, I mean, I paid $99 for the Atlas logo.
You're still using it, right?
Still using it. Yep, still using it. $99. Not because I didn't value it, but it was the quickest path to get there. And it also opened up the most options, and that's the key here. Like I could have went to one graphic artist and gotten a logo and maybe gotten what I wanted. Right. Or I could have went somewhere else and gotten hundreds of different versions and been able to down select and pick the one that caught my eye the most and worked the best, and then individually work with those artists to make it exactly what I wanted.
Yeah.
So for me, it was expediency and getting exactly what I wanted. And I suspect that that's all most companies really care about.
Well, and your company, like anything that needs a logo, started from a small place and grew. Like you didn't have if you went to rebrand today, you'd assign a budget that'd be on a line item, and it'd probably be a big ticket thing. You didn't have a lot of cash to throw around then. It's a natural evolution that you would try something like this and perhaps later invest.
That's exactly right. We haven't needed to reinvest yet, but if I did, I would be able to throw far greater numbers at it than $99 that I could 5 years ago.
Maybe there's 150 designs,
Yeah, I might even use 99 design, but the premium one, I think it's $600. I'd go up 6x.
There you go. Yeah.
I think that's the perfect example. I mean, that's the choice I made. And I think let's not forget the bulk of companies are small.
Right.
And people are always starting companies. And most of the art business, the bulk of the art business is in that process. Representation on the internet, representation on packaging. It's not novel or custom art that is a one-off, right? Like NFTs, etc.
So here's my prediction. Companies today eventually hire a graphic designer as they grow. Depending on the industry or whatever, maybe could be the second employee, right, at some like digital studio, could be the 30th employee at a tech company. Whatever that, nth in line is, I bet it doubles now. And the responsibilities will instead go to some other person. Your SEO expert will also use this thing to make our blog images before we hire the graphics person. We're just going to delay creating such a position in organizations.
Absolutely. It might even be marketing, which, SEO
for
is
sure.
part of marketing, right?
Yeah.
Somewhere in marketing, we don't have an SEO person yet, but we have 3 marketing adjacent people, 1 head of marketing and 2 people who help part-time. One of them would likely take this.
Yep.
Because I could use it right now. I'm writing a lot of articles. I could say, okay, I need an image generated of this, and it would be great to have.
So what do we have any advice for these low-rent graphic designer types, people who, I can't imagine you're passionate about making an ad for eggs and milk, but you do it because there's a paycheck there. We're saying that paycheck's going away. What should those people do instead?
That's a really good question. That's something worth putting a moment of thought into. At first glance, I would say some of those people are going to end up having to switch to the marketing side and leveraging the dall-e tools with their knowledge about color and expression and what works and what doesn't, and just becoming the stewards of the tool along with other aspects of marketing. That's part of what I think, right? Because graphic design and marketing are very similar in a way. It's all about representation. So I could think that's one area you could go, but that's far and few compared. There's going to be far more jobs for graphic design currently than there is than there will be in the future that can fill those roles.
For sure. Yeah, so where it will go, yours is an interesting point. I see that as like the blue collar point of view. Like, I happen to have this job where, I'm going to switch to a different job. I'm going to be the operator of the model. And if it's just work for work, that's fine. My image of a graphic designer, maybe this is a skew because I don't know that many, but I would think you aspire to create and to like design the next great Nike swoosh or whatever. And you start at the bottom and you work your way up. So you take making stuff you don't like or find uninspiring as your way into the industry and yada yada. So I don't know what the end goal is. We still obviously need hyper creative people at the top. I guess it's chasing that path, but I don't think the path is going to be there in Photoshop anymore. It's going to be in a different tool, or maybe it's video stuff. As much as I would hate to find a video on every website I go to, maybe that's what the future is.
Well, there's also industrial design, which I think is an interesting area that we haven't talked about how it could be affected. We've mostly talked about, in general, just art. But industrial design is art plus the physical world and human manipulation, right? Mm-hmm. The iPhone, is it industrial design? Jonathan Ive with the iPhone.
You were more of an expert in this space than me, but I think you would be hard-pressed to not label it as an important example of industrial design.
It's the profession and practice of designing products, devices, objects, and services used by millions of people. Okay, so
services, wow, okay.
Industrial design, it's a big deal. And a lot of it begins in the art, and then it has to make its way into the real world. I can see some of these graphic designers, more people shifting to industrial design, perhaps even, I don't know if user interface development would be part of industrial design, but getting creativity in that area, because that's about how you take the intent of the user, like what task are they trying to solve, what are they trying to accomplish with this user interface or this design, and then concretizing it, I guess you could say. That's an interesting area. I think that you might see some benefit where they can leverage these tools to make it make really cool industrial designs, like the next iPhone or whatnot. Because you can tell dall-e, I'm sure, design an iPhone. I mean, or not an iPhone, but design a handheld device that I can talk on. I'm sure it would design something, but it would be based on history.
Oh, an infinite number of variations that all look plausible. For sure, it could do that.
Right, but the thing about industrial design is it's about form and function as it relates to the human hands, and
you just made a killer point.
A little less art, but it takes in more variables, right? That's the harder part about industrial design, is knowing when to take a risk with the design features that people interact with in the physical world. So go ahead.
Well, there's two concerns that an industrial design person has to have, at least maybe more, but two that come to my mind. One is, how is this device going to degrade? Like, you don't want it to be broken 3 weeks later. It should have some long lifespan, and you need to design it with that in mind. And secondly, manufacturing cost. I mean, you might design something to be cheaper or to be within the budget you're shooting. And both of those things, dall-e currently has no ability to help you with.
Exactly. That's why I think industrial design would be an area where we're going to see more products being made, and industrial design focuses on products. So taking those creative people who really like graphic design and re-educating them in industrial design, I think they would find it exciting, just as exciting, but they could leverage some of the tools. Like, I could see them saying, give me some ideas about a new clock, right, sits next to the bed.
Inspiration,
okay, great.
Sure.
Inspiration, yep. I think a lot of ways dall-e will be used for inspiration, but I still say that the bulk of basic artwork will be done by machines within the next 5 years, like you said.
Yeah.
But the wholesale replacing, I think, 2 points. One, industrial design, you can't wholesale replace that. It's going to be really hard and it's going to take longer. Two, the custom nature of having a human doing and paying more for it. So you might see NFTs. I'm just circling back on what we talked about earlier, but you might see NFTs that were hand-drawn by a human. You might see logos that were hand-drawn by a human. And I see there's still going to be a market for that. It's just going to be tiny because it won't be efficient. Coca-Cola can afford it, right?
Yep.
It's going to be a $100,000 logo.
Right.
More.
Yeah, right,
in 10 years, $100,000 will be, you'll need to, it'll probably be closer to like $400,000.
Oh, you're optimistic about inflation. Okay, great.
I would warn all my graphic designer friends, let's put it that way.
Have a plan, yeah.
Have a plan. Be ready to do something else. Because loyalty only takes you so far. I'm sure they have some loyal customers, but it's only going to take them so far when people can iterate on their own and find something that they like, and they can do 700 iterations in a day.
Or I think they'll find that maybe the job, and this is good for some people, not good for others, is that they're spending more and more of their time people managing and less of it doing the actual craft.
That's right. Yep.
But yeah, there's a headline we looked at. I don't think we mentioned OpenAI is ready to sell dall-e to its first 1 million customers. So those products are on the way.